Good evening, you're watching 5 now at 5:30, keeping you up to date with the very latest news stories from around the world. It's 5 News.
Good evening, it's 5:30, I'm Charlie State. These are the headlines. Terror Iraqi style as guerrillas take journalists hostage. President Bush's right-hand woman gives evidence to the 9/11 inquiry. And families reunited. New rules on adoption. Chilling video footage of 3 Japanese journalists who've been taken hostage in Iraq has been aired on the Arab TV station Al Jazeera. The images show all 3 terrified and blindfolded. One has a sword held to his throat. The captors say the journalists will be killed if troops are not withdrawn. In some cities, the guerrillas are in charge and nowhere is safe. And in the flashpoints, the gunfighting between US soldiers and insurgents continues. This report starts with the harrowing images on that tape of the hostages.
A gun to his head and a knife held close to his throat. A Japanese hostage is filmed by his captors. Much of the video is too distressing to show. On it, the 3 Japanese, 2 men and 1 woman, are taunted and made to say Allah is great. The previously unknown group, the Mujahideen Squadrons, say the 3 will be executed in 3 days if Japan doesn't pull out its 550 troops from Iraq. The passports of the 3, an aid worker and 2 journalists, have also been displayed. There are at least 7 foreigners missing, thought now to be captives. One of them is a British contract worker, Gary Teeley from Cambridgeshire. A British journalist today described how he talked his way to freedom. He was held hostage for 8 hours after his car was attacked.
This lorry just cut in front of us and started opening fire with Kalashnikovs, and unfortunately shot out one of our tyres. We were basically grilled for a good 8 hours on why we were there, what we were doing there, and were we Americans, were we British, to which the answer was obviously yes, and were we soldiers, to which the answer was no. And it was once they satisfied themselves that we weren't soldiers that the mood relaxed.
Around the flashpoint city of Fallujah, it's been another day of bloodshed. Here an American tank is hit. This man has only superficial injuries, but other members of his crew are much more seriously hurt inside. Slowly they make their way out, and emergency medical treatment is administered. This has been the bloodiest week of battles since the war ended. The Marines here are many of the same men who are battling their way into Baghdad a year ago today. Tomorrow is the first anniversary of the fall of Saddam. Many of the Marines say the street-to-street fighting they're now encountering is more dangerous and more frightening than anything they found a year ago. These pictures show the determined resistance they're now facing. This is a well-armed guerrilla army. Some of these men are thought to be former members of Saddam's security services. They appear to be ambushing the Americans on every street corner, making them fight block by block, the most deadly type of warfare. Despite all this, the overall military commander in Baghdad says things are going well.
Today in Fallujah, the 1st Marine Expeditionary Force and the Iraqi Civil Defense Corps continue Operation Vigilant Resolve. They have made tremendous progress in restoring legitimate authority to Fallujah.
The situation's not only troubled in the Fallujah area. In the Shia south, the Mahdi army, followers of the Shia radical Muqtada al-Sadr, are still fighting, and the coalition has admitted it's no longer in control of the key cities of Najaf and Kut. In the Basra area, British troops came under fire. A number are reported to have been injured. James Bays, 5 News.
Well, as the violence continues in Fallujah and elsewhere in Iraq, the death toll on both sides keeps rising. Over 300 Iraqis have been killed, more than 30 coalition soldiers have died in this week's fighting alone. The US has vowed to keep up the fight, but it's paying the price in its soldiers' lives, each one of which is being felt deeply back home.
America's hard line against the uprising of Sunni and Shia militants has been felt not just in the battle-scarred streets of cities like Fallujah, but also thousands of miles away. In the quiet town of Orange, Texas, a mother reads the last email sent to her by her 19-year-old son before he was killed.
Hey Mom, ain't got long, but I love you. And
Shane Goldman was on his second tour of duty in Iraq and had just got engaged.
I always told him, Shane, you know, be careful, don't be a hero. He says, Mom, it's just a job. It's just my job. He wanted to be a Marine since he was a little bitty guy. And even some of his friends that called today told me, we remember Shane when we were in junior high, he wanted to be a Marine.
Despite his death and the many others this week, his family believes he was doing the right thing.
I support the president, support the government. You know, we're over there for a cause that that Shane believed in, and I just don't want that to be in vain. I want them to finish the job.
Grieving families are spread right across the United States. Over 630 U.S. soldiers have been killed in Iraq so far. The question is, how many more? Keith Doyle, 5 News.
So it seems the situation more than a year on from the war in Iraq is far from stable. If anything, it's heading towards anarchy. Yet the politicians here and in America insist the planned handover of power at the end of June will go ahead on time. We can cross now to our political editor, Andy Bell. Andy, given what's happening on the ground in Iraq, surely the handover of power can't take place as planned.
That remains the plan. One senior Foreign Office official that I spoke to this afternoon said we don't have an option. Anything else would look like a real retreat. So they're sticking to their exit strategy, which is a handover of power to an appointed interim Iraqi government on June the 30th, followed by elections in Iraq sometime in 2005 to have a proper democratically elected Iraqi government, with troops being withdrawn sometime over that period on a flexible timetable as long as the situation on the ground calms down.
So Andy, we have this June 30th date. After that, what's to stop Iraq descending into basically a civil war?
Well, first of all, we should make it clear that on June the 30th, troops will stay. There'll still be tens of thousands of American troops, plus about 9,000 British troops staying on after that handover of power. But they're also hoping that that transitional Iraqi government will be seen as a proper government by Iraqis and not as some kind of puppet regime. But there are plenty of skeptics. For instance, a critic of British policy who resigned from the Blair government over Iraq is very dubious about that June 30th handover.
We should imagine very much will happen. The same people will remain in the same government, a government chosen and appointed by the Americans, most of them exiles from outside Iraq. That in itself is not going to solve the problem. It may convince some voters in America that there's been a change in Iraq, but I doubt if it will convince the Iraqis.
And that now is the real challenge for London and Washington, to create an Iraqi government which is credible enough for them to hand over power properly, to allow those troops to be withdrawn without London and Washington being accused of cutting and running.
Andy, thank you very much for that. Condoleezza Rice, President Bush's national security advisor, received a grilling at the September the 11th inquiry today. She's being forced to explain how much the White House knew about the threat from Osama bin Laden before the 9/11 attacks. Concerns are that the United States was blind to the danger that terrorism posed to homeland security, and in focusing on Saddam Hussein, Condoleezza had the wrong target in her sights.
Some believed it could be the performance to make or break the Bush presidency. U.S. National Security Advisor Condoleezza Rice coming before the commission investigating whether the Bush administration did or did not ignore warnings about terrorist plans to use passenger jets as missiles, and answering questions under oath.
Nothing but the truth.
Watching the hearing, families of those killed in the World Trade Center attack, and a live TV audience of millions.
As an officer of government on duty that day, I will never forget the sorrow and the anger that I felt, nor will I forget the courage and resilience of the American people, nor the leadership of the President that day.
She admitted a big part of the problem was that US domestic and international intelligence agencies, the FBI and CIA, did not share intelligence properly.
But for a country that had not been attacked on its territory in a major way in almost 200 years, there were a lot of structural impediments to those kinds of attacks. Those changes should have been made over a long period of time.
She also faced robust questioning from the panel about the actions of the president before 9/11.
You said the president was tired of swatting flies. Can you tell me one example where the president swatted a fly when it came to Al-Qaeda prior to 9/11?
I think what the president was speaking to was...
What fly had he swatted?
Well, the disruptions abroad was what he was really focusing on. When the CIA would go after Abu Zubaydah, go after this guy, and...
Dr. Rice, we only swatted a fly once on the 20th of August, 1998. We didn't swat any flies afterwards. How the hell could he be tired?
But she denied suggestions that the president had planned a war with Iraq from the moment he came to office.
The president listened to all of his advisors. I can tell you that when he went around the table and asked his advisors what he should do, not a single one of his principal advisors advised doing anything against Iraq.
It was a composed and measured performance, but there was no apology for the failure to prevent 9/11, and as yet no verdict on whether she has done enough to convince the Commission and the American public. Ben Ando, 5 News.
Well, Condoleezza Rice is the first woman to have occupied the key post of National Security Advisor. Personally close to the president, she speaks fluent Russian, French and Spanish. She's single and admits she has no private life to speak of. But what more do we know about the woman nicknamed the Warrior Princess? Here's 5 facts. Regarded as one of America's brightest politicians, Condoleezza Rice went to university at just 15 years old. A concert-level pianist, she originally wanted to be a classical musician. She started her political life as a Democrat, but in 1982 switched sides after becoming disillusioned with Jimmy Carter's policies. She's a fitness fanatic and is said to like working out to heavy metal music by Led Zeppelin. As an oil company director, Condoleezza Rice had an oil tanker named after her, later changed because of terror fears. And just in case you were wondering about that name, her parents, we're told, were musicians, and in musical terms, Condoleezza means to play with sweetness. Okay, more stories making the headlines this evening. The Bank of England has decided to leave interest rates unchanged at 4%. The decision means homeowners won't be forking out more money for their mortgages, but experts have warned that a rise of 0.25% is almost certain to be announced next month. The funeral of murdered teenager Shafilia Ahmed took place today. The 17-year-old went missing from her home in Warrington last September. The body was later found on a riverbank in the Lake District. Her parents were arrested and later bailed after speculation that she was the victim of an honour killing. They both strongly deny any involvement in her death. Defence giant BAE Systems is to cut another 1,000 jobs over the next 2 years. The announcement comes just a week after the company revealed plans to axe 760 workers. The firm says the move is a reaction to a lower workload in its aviation business. Engineering work on the railways is set to cause massive travel disruption during the Easter weekend. Maintenance work will close some stations, increase journey time and reduce the number of services on the network. We'll take a break in just a moment, but stay with us because coming up, new hope for thousands of people trying to contact their adopted children. And can Newcastle United work some Magpie magic in tonight's UEFA Cup showdown? All that plus the weather where you are. That's your news from 5 News after the break. This is 5 News. It's 5:48. Welcome back. Tonight's top story, chilling pictures of 3 Japanese journalists taken hostage in Iraq have been released. The images showing the trio blindfolded were aired on the Arab TV station Al Jazeera. Their captors say they will execute the prisoners unless Japanese troops withdraw from Iraq within 3 days. For years, a child brought up by adoptive parents has had the right, should they want it, to track down their natural family. Now new laws are being proposed which would afford that right to the mothers who gave the child up in the first place. The government is insisting the changes will be brought in a sensitive way and that the privacy of all the parties involved is paramount.
Alex James is one of over 855,000 adults in Britain who were adopted as children. 2 years ago, she learned in an unexpected phone call that her birth relatives wanted to contact her.
I had a phone call from the company I used to work at, basically saying, I've, got somebody trying to find you, and I thought it was somebody that I maybe been to school with, etc. Anyway, to cut a long story short, she said to me, it's actually your sister. The immediate emotion was that I didn't know I had a sister, so I knew I had a birth mother out there somewhere, but I had no idea I had a sister, so I remember sitting at my desk and sort of dropping the phone and bursting into tears.
Alex's birth mother and sisters tracked her down using the internet. At the moment, there are countless internet sites full of messages left by adopted children desperate to try and get in contact with their birth parents again, and from mothers who gave up their children for adoption decades ago, leaving heartbreaking messages pleading for their child to get in contact again. But the service across the country is patchy, and for the first time the government is planning to open a series of intermediaries, agencies that will act as go-betweens between the adopted child and their birth parents. And for the first time, birth parents will have the same legal rights to be able to use those intermediaries to contact their adopted child.
No identifying information can be given to the birth relative, but it means the adoption support agency can try and locate the adopted adult on that birth relative's behalf.